serves as Dean of the Urban Institute at the International Theological Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Many, many accomplishments. And so at this time, please help me welcome Dr. C.T. Vivian.
Thank you.
And next, we have Xerona Clayton. Xerona is the founder and president and CEO of the Trumpet Awards Foundation and creator and executive producer of the foundation's Trumpet Awards. The Trumpet Awards is a prestigious event highlighting African American accomplishments and contributions. Initiated in 1993 by Turner Broadcasting, the Trumpet Awards has been televised annually and distributed internationally to over 185 countries around the world. Ms. Clayton began her television career in 1967 and became the South's first Black person to have her own television show. The Xerona Clayton Show was a regular feature on WAGA-TV, a CBS affiliate in Atlanta. Xerona has gotten many, many awards. She has been dedicated to the community and is reflected in the many hours she spends promoting human relations through biracial groups devoted to improving racial understanding. Some of the awards that she has received includes the Local Community Service Awards from Spelman College for her continued dedication to leadership in the community, and the State of Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity presented her with the Leadership and Dedication in Civil Rights Awards. She's also received the first Coretta Scott King Award from the SCLC, the Madam C.J. Walker Award from Ebony's Outstanding Women in Marketing and Communications, and the Outstanding Corporate Professional Award from the Power Networking family. The Atlanta City Council also honored Xerona with her name on a street in downtown Atlanta. So as you're walking downtown, you will see a street after our very own Xerona Clayton. Please help me welcome Ms. Xerona Clayton. So at this time, I just want to pose our first question. I'm going to start with Ms. Clayton, and then we're going to go to Dr. Vivian. So Ms. Clayton, what experiences can you share with the students regarding your involvement with the civil rights movement?
Well, my first answer would be, I had the pleasure of working with this handsome man right here. Every day I saw him. So I feel very fortunate, and I will tell you something about him in a moment. I think Andrew Young says it best when they said that I probably spent more hours and time with Martin Luther King Jr. than anybody else. And the reason for that is I've not only worked at the SCLC office, but I also was a personal friend of the families. I traveled with Mrs. Martin Luther King on her nationwide concert tours. And also being a family member, they had 4 children, and the King family is pretty large, and they had birthdays all the time. So I was invited to those personal moments. I also had the infamous task of driving Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the airport to go to Memphis. But I make it clear to everybody that I did not march. I helped to organize them or implement the organizational process. But when I first came to Atlanta, I had read every time those people marched, they threw them in jail. So when I came to Atlanta, I was scared to go to jail. And so I would say, as I would help put the pieces together for the marches, and Martin Luther King said, "You're gonna march today?" I said, "No, next time, because I don't have any tennis shoes today." And I'd give these excuses. But I did help to do a lot of things, and one of the things that CT, I don't know if you knew this or not, but I moved here from California, and one of the girls in the office said they had decided among themselves that they were not gonna like me. That I came in here from California being Hollywoodish, and they weren't gonna like me. And then she adds to that, but Xerona made us like her. What I did is, see, I knew Martin Luther King Jr. from afar. Like, I'd see him in California, in Chicago. I mean, he was in, lavish suites, escorted by security people and chauffeured limousines. And so somehow when I came to Atlanta, I was expecting the same environment. So I was surprised when this office in which he worked was just a small, non-descriptive place. And I said, oh, we got to clean this up. And so I got in there and started creating the conference room. You remember that, CT?
Yeah.
And I fixed up the walls and the curtains. I said to the girls, come on now, let's change the look of this place. And we were busy. We cleaned up everybody's office and made it a nice uptown looking place. And they said the reason they ended up forcing them to like me was they were so tired. I got everybody busy and we made changes. But I enjoyed every moment at SCLC. And Dr. King was very flattering when they said, Xerona can do everything. So now when people ask me what did I do at SCLC, I said he thought I could do everything. They gave me everything to do. And that's exactly what I did. But I wish that each of you would have the privilege and the honor of working in a mission-oriented environment. We got a chance to see dedication at work every day. Dr. King would, when they planned a march and a meeting in a conflict area, there were men who Dr. King would say, let's get Hosea to get us a group together. People who would answer the call of duty. Answer the call of duty. And you never saw that fighting. It wasn't, it was nonviolent movement. But people inside the operation never even thought about anything other than pulling together because we got a lot at stake. And I want to tell you something that kind of experience will stay with you the rest of your life. And I want to tell you about Reverend C.T. Vivian's specific role. When our children were spat on, dogs biting at them, and the things you probably have read about, you often ask the question, was all of that worth it? And let me tell you, the work that was done definitely was worth it, because all of that energy and abuse and brutality, insulting kind of moments were for a bigger cause. C.T. Vivian, I have to tell this story. I tell it all the time whether he's present or not. And especially when it comes down to the period of election and campaigning. Black people did not have the right to vote. C.T. Vivian and a group of people had decided we're going to do something about it. And he led a group to the courthouse steps just to get in to register to vote. Not to burn the building down, not to create chaos, but say we're coming in this building to register to vote. But guess what happened? They were met by sheriffs and law enforcement people. That part has bothered me more than anything else, CT, that when you think of law enforcement, people who are supposed to protect you and your rights and the law against abusing you. Here were the perpetrators, people who were law enforcement people, coming there to butt the group. And Reverend Vivian said, "Sir, we're just here to register to vote." Well, they ended up with such violence Reverend C.T. Vivian was beaten in the head, blood running down his face. And he said, let's pray. Now what I want you to do is to find the footage. It's somewhere, wherever you live, you can find the footage. And anytime there's an election, wherever you live, and you're trying to decide whether I should vote or not, I don't have time to vote, I don't need to vote, I don't want to vote, my vote doesn't count. I want you to remember something I'm going to say to you right now. If you ever have a moment like that, go find the footage and look at it. Because I tell people all the time, if you see the footage of Reverend C.T. Vivian and those people who were praying on the steps of a public building, who were just trying to get inside the building to make it possible for us to vote, you will never not vote. And to the question of is it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it. Because when you're mission oriented, you've got a cause. It's not personal at all. It's a cause that you're willing to die for, and many people did. But what Reverend Vivian did and others led to, and I tell him now that to me was a moment in history. When you see the sacrifices made by the people who are making it possible for us, you will never not vote. But that ended up leading to a real right, because we got a Civil Rights Act, a Voting Rights Act. So now nobody can deny you the right to vote. Now I'm often asked, what do I think of young people's inaction today? And I said, I'm saddened by it. But then I said, perhaps you don't have a burning desire to do anything. Because you can go to any place, there's a water fountain, and drink from the fountain. You go on public transportation, you can sit any place you want to sit. You got some money, you can rent an apartment any place you find one. You got enough money to buy a house, you can buy a house any place you want. You know why? Because the path has already been cleared for you. Thank you.
She posed some really, really good questions that I hope you have jotted down and that you will think about as we go forward in this panel and just in the future. Because I think that really is, at the end of the day, the question to how we get our young people engaged and passionate about the future and what we can do to make a difference, and looking at what some of our civil rights people did to make a difference for us. And so, Dr. Vivian, you want to just share with us what your experiences were from the civil rights movement?
I want to start at another point.
Okay.
That's the idea, is that what we needed as a people, and don't think beyond that. I mean, the people, you are representatives of a people. You're not just yours alone, all right? Because you owe too much to too many people who have continuously done work for 400 years. Remember, we were never liked or accepted, and still not completely accepted, even with a president of the United States, one of us, all right? So don't take it for granted that everything is going to be all right. It's going to be all right if you make it right, right? There's not been a time in the history of this country that African Americans have not had to make it so, right? No one has, when you hear people talk about, and we gave you people, they haven't given us nothing. And you have to know that everything you have, everything you're going to have, will be because you made it happen, all right? You made it happen. Black people made it happen, all right? And that's where another principle comes in, right? And that is the principle of the beloved community. you have to know that all of you are needed. All of you need to depend upon each other, all right? Because others is what you're dealing with, all right? Every chance you have to move up, to even exist in this country as more than a slave, has to do with what other people have done to make it possible for you to do whatever you're going to do. Don't ever forget that, right? Because that is a part of your being a member of the beloved community. That was one of Martin King's basic things, right? Is that we must create the beloved community where we care for each other for the reasons that we know and talk about all the time, right? Now that means that there has to be a beloved community beyond just race, right? But you have to start with race. Everybody else has in this country, all right? Everybody has. And when they came here, they were Italians, they were Germans, they were this and that. After a while, they became white. They did that, all right? Why? Because they wanted the unity of enough people to give them an advantage, period. Not just an advantage over you, an advantage, all right? And you have to understand that. And understand another thing while you're at it, is that we're just not talking about attacking a people or attacking people. We're really talking about the forces of evil behind what you see happen to you, all right? Because when it gets down to it, they will attack anybody, right? If money's involved, right? They will also organize if money's involved, if their group is involved. Isn't it interesting? A short time here, and any group that comes in here will have more money than black people. And that's for one reason, is because we are not united, right? We're getting the extra, but when they come in, they unite. It's interesting to me that every small group, it could be from a very small nation, can come in here and they're well off and living in better circumstances than we are within 10 or 15 years. Why is that? Because we are not united. And we must unite on every hand. And you in particular, because you have an education. And what you have to see is that education has been bought, right? That education has not been yours because of you. It's been yours because of a lot of other people over a period of time, right? Now, is that there's only been 5 great black leaders. I haven't got time to deal with that. We'll deal with that some other time. But what I want to deal with is the last one is Martin King. But the thing that you've got to see is that the reason they were the greatest, because they had a strategy. They had a strategy for change. And we were standing still for a goodly period because we didn't have a strategy. And then finally, there comes Martin King on the scene with a strategy, nonviolent, direct action. Now, I pause because I don't want you just to talk about nonviolence. I want you to talk about nonviolent direct action. It's a strategy, all right? It's a strategy, and you have to be able to use it as a strategy. That's why it's nonviolent direct action. Is that because if you use it as a strategy, it will work. If you think, however, it's just a matter of being meek and mild and et cetera, just for the sake of being meek and mild, you miss. All right? It's a strategy for change. And you've got to change the conditions we live under. And violence won't get it. All right? Somebody said to me, boy, Malcolm is so great. Malcolm was so great. And I said, what did he change? And they always look at me and say, well, but he was great. Well, that's nice, all right, to be great. But if you're not great for something, you are not great, all right? And that's what you have to understand, right? Is that what change was made in Harlem because of Malcolm, right? Malcolm was a wonderful guy, but his own people killed him. Why? Because they didn't have the guts to follow him. Remember that. That's very important stuff, right? Is that, and when you're ready for me to stop, just tell me.
I was going to add, thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Vivian. So let me ask you a question, Dr. Vivian, because you mentioned Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And for many of our young people, that was the last thing we were talking about. For many of our young people, and even myself, I'm not as young as they are, but he is this superhero, this super action figure. When we go to our grandparents or our mothers, there's a picture of Obama, President Obama, and then there's a picture of Martin Luther King. I would like to make him a little bit more human for our young people. So can you and Miss Clayton just share one quick moment? What's your favorite moment? It could be something he said, a story, but what's a favorite moment that you have with Dr. Martin Luther King?
This is
Can't wait to say.
There is no individual moment.
Okay.
It was when nonviolent direct action won in Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
In other words, we had to see that something had really changed and that we could have more than we thought we could have.
Okay.
But it had to be done with a movement. It's a person. Isn't nearly as important as a strategy. Mm-hmm. Remember that. Generals are not as important as their strategies. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. Is that, in fact, you have no right to be a general if you don't have a strategy. All right? You just got on something, right? You got on that won't get it, they can shoot right through that.
Right, you need this. No, so Ms. Clayton, is there a personal, just something that you can share with our students?
Yes. I find that as I go around and talk about Martin Luther King Jr., the one thing that people didn't know about him and are surprised to know about him is he was a very, very funny man, humorous. See, when you saw him on television and saw him making appearances, he was doing serious work, so he didn't laugh. I remember when Oprah Winfrey introduced this piece of film one day. She said, here's a picture of Martin Luther King you've probably never seen, and it was a picture of him laughing. But in private, that's what he would do. He would relax and tell jokes and tell stories. And the one story I tell that really makes him human was, as I said before, when I used to see him away from Atlanta, this is before I moved here, he was being escorted around in grand style like a celebrity, which he was to the nation.
Right.
So when I came to Atlanta, he co-pastored the church with his father, and he told me and my husband that he and Coretta wanted to take us to dinner after church. Well, I noticed that in the front of the church was a sign that said reserved for the pastor, so the car was parked there, but I didn't pay attention to it. When he got through doing his ecclesiastical business, he came in and said, okay, we're ready to go to dinner now. It's a bright, sunshiny day. Now, when he came down, to the street, he got into the driver's side. And I said, I didn't think Martin Luther King knew how to drive. Well, no, he can't drive. This was his car. But guess what now? Picture this, as they say, bright sunshiny day. The car was near the corner in front of the church. He turned the ignition on, and the windshield wipers started going. So I just assumed he'd hit the wrong button. But now we're put the car in reverse, and then we go all the way up to the corner, windshield wipers still going. We turn the corner in reverse, windshield wipers. Now after a moment, I mean, even though you're a polite guest, you gotta ask, what's going on here? And he said, oh, nothing. He said, it takes about a block for this car to warm up. So we backed all the way up to the end of the block, and sure enough, he stopped. And then the windshield wiper ceased, and we went forward. Well, I just fell out laughing. I just said, oh, just wait till I go tell the nation you are at home. And we had a big laugh about that. But here was a man who drove a very non-pretentious car, who didn't care if the windshield wipers were going like this. He was basically just a human being like everybody else. And we saw many examples of that the man was self-effacing. He did not see himself as any famous person. He had a mission to accomplish, and that was his daily work.
Wow, thank you.
Get it.
Thank you.
This is it, is that be wary of anybody that doesn't have a sense of humor.
Wow, okay, thank you.
Be wary of anybody that doesn't have a sense of humor, because they probably don't have much humanity.
So, that's right.
And that's what it's all about. Look, now I want you to think about this every day you live, because Martin had to think about it every day he lived from the time that he wrote his first book. Is that he was in Harlem, and he was signing books, and a woman came up to him, a black woman, sister, I think, and she said, are you Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? And he said, yes, ma'am, I'm he. And he was continuing to write.
He was autographing his book, wasn't he?
That's right. And she pulled out a knife and drove it into his chest. Is that they immediately took him to the hospital, and the newspaper said the next day that if the pen had, the point of the knife had gone any further, it would have destroyed the aorta in his heart, and there was no way you could save anyone. It would have died, right? Now let's go on a step. When he was killed, finally, in Memphis that day, they took him to the hospital because he had been shot, right? And there was a knife going down. This one was across. They cut him open to be able to get the knife out. When they sewed it up, and you've never seen this before, and we didn't even know it for a long time. I mean, we who were right close to it didn't even know it for a long time. Is that it made a scar that was a cross, and it was right across his heart, right? Now remember, every day he got up, right? And he was shaving, looking in the mirror, right? He realized that death was always close, and that he could have died as easily as he could have lived, right? Is that, and he would tell us finally when we found out, what was going on. He told us, he said, don't forget you can die every day at this. So don't get involved. And he doesn't say it as hard as I said it. He said it with jokes, all right. But I didn't see any joke in it. He said that you can die any day doing what we're doing. So make certain that you know why you're doing what you're doing and how important it is that you're willing to